Hello and welcome to episode 46 of the Rockies Now podcast. We are a Colorado Rockies podcast. Whether you're a Rockies fan or just a baseball person, you can follow us at Rockies Now on all of your favorite social media platforms: Facebook, X, Instagram, and Threads. Thanks for joining with us today. I'm your host, Steven. Co-host Tom is here. And with us, we have a special guest. We have Christopher Nelson II, who's a big Rockies fan, done a Rockies podcast in the past. We've had him on here before. So, Chris, welcome aboard.
Yeah, thank you guys. Good to be here. Usually I'm on the other end. I'm doing all the
Right.
administrating. So it's good to just sit here and talk and just have a fun conversation for once, especially about Rockies baseball, right? So it's a good time. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, no. Yeah, like our pleasure because for a while, we've had you on before, at least on Instagram, and it was an easy yes to have you back on here. So happy to have you here. We're kind of in that area where it's like going into the new year, not a lot of moves are being made. However, the Rockies did make a couple moves. We're going to talk about that later on in the podcast, right there at the end. But as we head into 2024, let's talk about like some of the projections because some of those are coming out already, especially on Fangraphs for the Rockies. And if you're a diehard Rockies fan, it's kind of disappointing, but it's to be expected to see some of the numbers that you see on Fangraphs. Not very positive, but take it what you will. I mean, there's some bright spots in that lineup, like Nolan Jones. Breakout year last year. A lot of people see him, going up next year and doing well, and potentially becoming the new face of the Rockies franchise for the time being, at least until some of the younger guys come up, like Amador and Zach Veen. So. I'll hand it over to Tom here to kind of get us into the Fangraphs and kind of talk about the Rockies as we head into 2024.
Well, I know some people are probably wondering what the team projections are to this point, but Fangraphs or Pacoda have not released those just yet. But they have released their projections for individual basis on on the projected players of each roster. So, I mean, I'm not sure what everybody what I want to talk about. Steven, you and I touched on this a little bit before we started. I'm not sure this one to Rockies fans or anyone, this may or may not shock you, but their highest projected the player to play the most games is Ezequiel Tovar at 146, Nolan Jones at 139, and Ryan McMahon rounds out the top three at 136. Last year, of course, Tovar and McMahon led the team with games played in 153. So that's where we can start. And the unfortunate part that is not going to make everybody really, really happy is the highest projected WAR. And again, this is projected. This is not what it will actually will, but we have to wait and see how that goes. Is Nolan Jones at 2.0. The shocking thing about it is they project him to have a negative defensive WAR of negative 4.1, which is odd to me. So that's just a little bit of a rundown to it. The highest defensive WAR projection is Brenton Doyle at 10.3, and the highest offensive WAR for the Rockies will be Nolan Jones at 3.9. They're projecting actually a tie for who's going to lead the team in home runs. Do you guys want to take a stab at who you think those two players are?
Oh yeah, I think you mentioned it like before we got in here. Was it
kind of, but yeah, I didn't mention the exact names though.
Oh,
okay. Chris, do you have a guess?
Well, it's got to be either Nolan Jones or bounce back year for Chris Bryant, right? It has to be reasonably one of those two. Because I was thinking Eloise Montero might be a sneaky pick, but I don't know if he's going to get the PT, the playing time, suitable for him to actually put up like 30 home runs in a single season. So I think Nolan's a lock for an everyday role, which would make him the most reasonable. But I think a bounce back year for Chris Bryant would be nice. I think he started to pick it up towards the end of the year once he got healthy for once in a while, at least for a little bit. So we know obviously he has the pop. I think those would be my top two based on who I'm thinking of right now.
Steve, what about you?
Rymack is one of them. I think he's probably one of them. And then the other one, I don't know. I'll just stop with Rymack. I'll just go with Rymack.
Okay. Well, Chris, you were mysterious. You were right on one. Nolan Jones is one, and McMahon was third with 21, and Chris Bryant was fourth with 19. Yeah. So this next name it shocked me. I don't know if it's going to shock you guys. They have Hunter Goodman tied with Nolan Jones for number one at 20.
Oh, really?
I like that.
Wow. I like it too. I noticed him in the projections, and I actually, I'm not gonna lie, I forgot about him for a little bit because he was a later season call up. But if he does get that everyday role in like right field or DHing, depending on where guys like Chris Bryant or Charlie Blackmon are playing, I could see it. He's got some pop.
Yeah, so like I said, Nolan Jones is projected to play 139 games. Hunter Goodman only 117, but we obviously know what kind of power he has. He's a big, strong man who, if he gets a hold of one, he can hit it a country mile. So the projected power numbers per games played doesn't surprise me, but the fact that he's up there, I think it's comforting for us considering, Steven, you in particular, we talked a lot about him at the end of last season when he came up, or as he was going on that dominant stretch in AAA.
Yeah, and again, he won the minor league player of the year last year, which is
Mhm.
huge. I mean, the guy has a huge ceiling, and he needs his playing time. And I just don't like the Rockies. I don't want to see the Rockies kind of waste away his talent by sitting him on the bench or calling him down to AAA because what we saw last year, he was ready. I mean, there was some talk about calling him up like right after the All Star break, or even a little bit shortly after that, going into August. And I feel like they called him up at the right time, and I know some people will argue saying, oh, well, Bud Black, they benched him too much at the end of the year. Well, you got to play Chris Bryant because he's healthy. You're paying him. He's your highest paid player. You can't just like sit Bryant, right? Um, so yeah, Hunter Goodman, like that's very interesting because Hunter Goodman, again, I think he's going to be a big part of this future as long as he stays healthy and he's
Mhm.
hitting well. Because look what he did in Albuquerque. I mean, come on, it's pretty crazy of the numbers he put up, the power he has, and not to mention he has said that he likes to emulate Justin Turner, big guy, a Rockies killer. So it's something I like to. I want to see him, of course, play more, and I think that we're going to see him, obviously, in that 6-man platoon this year with Bryant, Blackman, Montero at first base, kind of in that right field, first base, DH role, and I think that just fits him well. And we mentioned this before too, very briefly though, that Goodman can catch, but again, we're going to get this later on in the podcast, but. The Rockies, they got a backup catcher, so now it's basically sealed, if you want to call it that. That Hunter Goodman is going to be pretty much first base, right field, DH, and I think that fits him a little bit more because
Mhm.
the Rockies, they already have some catching coming up because who knows, they could be trading away Diaz or both catchers with Jacob Stallings and Elias Diaz at the deadline. And if Romo is ready, which I don't think he will quite yet, we still got to see him in AAA. I know for a lot of Rockies fans, like, oh, AAA, he gets there 2 weeks and he gets called up. That's wishful thinking, I guess, as a Rockies fan, is something that we'd like to see. But for all of us Rockies fans, we want to make sure these players are healthy, of course, but also get the time that they need. Because Tovar is an exception because ever since he got sent up from single A to double A to triple A, he was already a top shortstop prospect in baseball, and I just feel like he earned it. The Rockies, they really needed their shortstop over Jose Iglesias. So Hunter Goodman is a guy to keep your eye out for next year, or I should say this year, because the guy, he could become a future star player because of the power that he has and the talent that he has for the Rockies moving forward.
Yeah, and actually, another interesting one that people may or may not find interesting, with 146 games played, 12 rounds out the top 5 and home runs at 18. I think he hits, was it 16, I think, or maybe 14, I think he hit this year. I can't remember
It was
exactly.
it was like 14 or 15, I think. That sounds about right.
Well, he does. It's good that for a shortstop, he does have some powers. So that is good to see it. And then RBI, I guess we'll go quickly to RBIs. Nolan Jones is projected to lead at 80, followed by Bryant 72, McMahon and Tovar 71, and then Goodman is projected to have 67 and to run out the top 5. Stolen bases, it shouldn't surprise anybody who's projected to lead that category.
Doyle.
Yeah.
Mr. Doyle, Gold Glove winner.
And then the only guys above 10, Jones 16, Tovar 13. The interesting thing, it's unfortunate they only have of all the projected everyday players, the main 9 or 10, or maybe you can throw 11 guys that could be getting the most playing time of the position players. They only have 2 guys who are projected to have a walk rate of over 10%, which is McMahon at 10.5 and Jones at 11.6. To me, I don't know Chris, I don't know what your opinion is. To me, it would be nicer if when we construct our final lineup, we have guys who take more walks, or we at least have 3 or 4 guys who take plenty of walks. because I mean, it's good to have a good mix of hitters with contact and power at Coors Field, but walks do lead to runs, and that is getting guys on base that turns a lot, especially when you're trying to turn the lineup over to the guys at the front. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know what your opinion is on that one. We can go ahead and talk about that one too. Another thing I could throw in there with projected strikeout rate. We can get to that later, but yeah, I don't know. I wish the Rockies had more guys who had hitters who took more walks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to assume that strikeout rate is going to be pretty high on the projected numbers.
Yeah, I'll sort it out real quick. Does anybody want to guess who the highest projected strikeout of the main 10, 11 guys will say? Doesn't include
it's got to be Brenton Doyle. Brenton Doyle's got to be top 3. Okay.
Yep, they're projecting 32.4 for him. And then coming in after him, this is a guy who I've talked about this on a previous podcast. McMahon is projected for 28.6. I wish that number for him would come down a little more because I know he's got pop in that bat. Steve and I both commented we think he has 35 home run potential, but I wish he has kind of what I like to call a lofty swing. I wish if he leveled it out a little more, he could get more base hits and make more contact, which could lead to more hits and less strikeouts. But I'm not a hitting coach. I'm not in his ear, so I can't exactly tell him that.
No, but you're absolutely correct, which is the funny thing. I actually talked about this last summer on my podcast when I broke down Mac on one of my episodes. Mm-hmm. It's interesting to notice how over the years you can see his swing used to go from being very level, like you're talking about, and it actually was kind of the source of the minor league numbers that we saw him had that got him called up. But he hit like 300 over the course of his minor league career. Mm-hmm. So that's not a coincidence. Unfortunately, over the years, he started to get more of that golf-looking type of left-handed swing for whatever reason, and it looks pretty when it works. Unfortunately, his issue is that he now can't hit the high fastball because his swing is just not as level. So that is something I noticed. You're absolutely correct, and I don't think you have to be a hitting coach to notice that or to understand it. But that's definitely something I'd like to see come down too. But in terms of the walks, the issue you were making about the walks, it's interesting. Obviously, you'd like the team to increase their walk rate and lower the strikeout rate. But unfortunately, this team has a lot of younger guys on it. So the Goodmans of the world, the Doyles, even the Nolan Joneses, despite how well they played last year in their debut at the show level, Tovar, all the young guys, Montero too, all those young guys that are going to be in the lineup on a fairly consistent regular basis are going to be taking swings just because that's what young guys do. It's just an issue for them. I refer to this as like the young player syndrome. Is like me see ball that looks hittable, me must swing. So that's a problem, and it will hopefully come down over the years as these guys get more experience at the major league level. But I think for the next year or two, it's fairly likely to assume that strikeout rate is going to be high and that the walk rate is going to be up there too.
Yeah.
Or lower. It's gonna be lower.
I want to say Tovar at the end of this past year, his strikeout rate went down quite a bit because he was swinging at that slider outside, right? Outside and low. It was like early in the season, he could not stop swinging at that. And it was pulling a lot of Rockies fans' hair out, including mine. And it was just like, man, like it's understandable because I mean he's a rookie, but he just needs to, because if he stops striking out, that guy is going to be an on-base machine, and he already was. He actually tied Todd Helton's double record this year, in one season as a rookie, which is very, very impressive. I mean, Tovar is going to be a future all-star shortstop, in my opinion. I think a lot of people can agree with me on that. But one of the nice things I saw from Tovar is that his strikeout rate went down quite a bit, especially at the end of the season. Montero, kind of the same thing, but Montero still has that problem like Tovar. Swings out that, at that slider going down and in, even up a little bit, kind of like Mac. And I agree with you, Chris, is that, and Tom as well, like you look at 2017, 2018, Ryan McMahon, he didn't have the wobble. He didn't if you look at his stance, he didn't have the wobble. In my opinion, he looked a little bit more comfortable. For me, when I look back at those games, it just I see a little bit more comfortable hitter, because I don't know. For me, when you kind of relax in the box, it kind of makes you a better hitter. We've heard that before from other big league, guys. So I agree. I think Mac needs to change his swing a little bit, but it's not by much, because if he can just fix it just a little bit, the guy could go off. And I mean, we talked about this last week and the week before in several other podcasts. Mac has the potential, and we're still waiting for that 35 plus home run season for Mac, and we just haven't seen it yet. And it's very frustrating because it's when are we going to see that, and will we ever see that? That's the question.
I still think we can. Just a quick comment, Steven, to your point about Tovar. He's projected to lead the team in doubles with 34 this season.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, sounds about right.
And the strikeout leader is projected to be, and this is probably based off because of games played, and maybe a sophomore slump, but not slump, but sophomore struggles. Nolan Jones is projected to lead the team in strikeouts with 173. Behind him is McMahon with 165, Doyle with 164, and Tovar 151, and rounding out the top 5 is Goodman with 120. So they're projecting Goodman to strike out 120 times in 117 games.
Yeah,
which is to your point, Chris. It's understandable because you got that young guy syndrome. But the good news is when it comes to Tovar, he learned, unlike Javi Baez, to not lay off that slider. But so at least we don't for now. He doesn't have the Baez slider syndrome, as I guess you could call it.
No, yeah. And that's definitely represented in their stances too. That's another thing I noticed. I know these are the things that I notice when I'm watching the games on like TV and stuff, because it's easier to notice on TV than it is in person. Tovar started off with a much more like closed stance in the box earlier in the year, which made that outside slider look a lot more hittable and appealing. As the year went along, he started to even out his stance in the box, and it really did improve his ability to see the slider away and say, nope, that's not hittable. And it actually made his swing better too. That's probably when he started to hit his stride as the season went along.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I was going to mention about, you look at, some of the numbers that Tovar, again, like I mentioned about Tovar putting up during the season. I think at one point Tovar had more doubles than Francisco Lindor and Paul Goldschmidt, who won the MVP back in 2022. That's pretty cool, and it kind of tells you, hey, this guy has potential to be, like I said, an all-star, one of the best players in baseball. It's just that he's kind of in that first year. And Nolan Jones, I mean, late in the season, come on, he was kind of catching up to Tovar a little bit. Of course, he kind of, and it's kind of shocking. I know, Chris, you've alluded to, because I remember you mentioned on Instagram back in the summer how upset you were because the Rockies put him on the bench, like to start the season, and it's just and then that series in Seattle, they had him sit on the bench for 3 straight games, and then all right, you're going back to AAA, because if he would have played like 3 more games, maybe even 1 more game, he would have been in the conversation, I think, of Gold Glove. Is that correct? I think it was a couple of games, right?
For Nolan Jones?
Yeah, because I think there was some metric out there that you had to have a certain amount of games
Let me look
that you
it
had
up.
to play. Yeah, and I think Tom knows what I'm talking about.
He probably would have been, while Tom's looking that up, he probably would have been closer in the conversation if that was the case, I'd assume. I don't think he would have finished as a finalist, though, nonetheless, because even though he had a ton of outfield assists, you could notice that a lot of those fielding errors. I don't know. He had a stretch where he seemingly had at least one time, every few games, where he just completely misread a ball. And that probably had to do with the fact that he was playing both left and right field. And there's very different playing perspectives when you're playing from both those positions. I played outfield in high school, so I definitely understand that. But I mean, it definitely would have boosted him a little bit, maybe in the Rookie of the Year voting too, a tad, although the games played just pretty much eliminated him from that award to start with. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, here it is.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead, Steven. You go first.
Oh, I was just going to answer one of the questions that we had from YouTube. Axis says, what's your opinion on Sean Bouchard? And how high was he in the last couple of games? Yeah, he was, man, the guy, I remember this is before Tom came on board, this past year. This was back in 2022 at the end of the year. I did a podcast about Sean Bouchard and talking about how this guy might be a sleeper pick. Not a lot of people are noticing about Sean Bouchard and how good he was at the end of 2022, especially in that last series in LA. I remember he got that home run. And then this past year was out for the entire season with that injury that he got in spring training. Came back, had that nice couple of weeks to end the season. And then that final week against the Dodgers and Brewers was incredible. So I guess my opinion on him is that, keep an eye. I mean, he's going to be on the bench. I think the Rockies he was going to be the left fielder for the Rockies going into this past year, except when he got injured, the Rockies had to go out in free agency, get Profar. So he's going to be on the bench. I think I could see him getting like 15 home runs this year if he stays healthy, and that's a question entirely because
Mhm.
he's kind of struggled with that. Even going there up through the minor leagues, he kind of struggled with injuries. Um, so I'm curious to see what happens. So I guess I can go to Tom first. Like Tom, what do you think? Like what's your thoughts on Sean Bouchard?
I think if let's say, God forbid, one of the corner outfielders goes out, I think he's the first guy to take that playing time off the bench.
Mm.
Fangraphs is actually fairly kind to him, given that he's not playing a lot of. They don't project him to play many. Again, these are projections to everyone listening to this. These are all what they think based on historical data. And he doesn't have a lot of major league experience, but they're projecting to play 47 games and get 190 plate appearances, and the numbers are rather generous. 7 home runs, 23 RBIs. They're projecting him to have a slash line of 253, 344, 452 slugging. So that's that's quite
Wow.
nice. And a
Yeah.
projected WAR of 0.3. So again, I think he does have. I would put him on the bench for sure if he, knock on wood there with all blessed with good health here. I would keep him on the bench, and hopefully none of our outfielders go down. But if the first corner outfielder that goes down, I'd say if I were Bud Black, which I'm not, I would put him in there to take that playing time until and see where it goes. So, but he does present value, I think.
No, yeah, 100%. Huge value add to that bench for sure. I mean, like, what did he have? Like 2, 3 home runs in that final series of the year against the Twins?
I think it was 2.
Yeah.
It was 2.
Yeah, it was something like it. So he clearly picked up relatively right where he left off, right? Still going to draw walks. He's going to get on base. So super valuable as a bench guy primarily. Of course, like you said, Tom, if there is an injury that occurs, he's first in. But I think that's kind of where the interesting rotation with the bench comes into play, because you have, honestly, the fact that I forgot about Hunter Goodman speaks, I think, volumes rather, to the idea that there's such a backlog in that sort of right field first base rotation. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out, because you still have Chuck, obviously, Charlie Blackmon, who can go out and play right field. He did it at the end of last year when he was healthy. And putting all of those pieces together is going to be very critical for Bud Black to do. I think Sean will contribute in some regard, but I think that the whole Hunter Goodman thing is very interesting to me. I really didn't see him starting the year off as a regular in any position for that matter, but especially right field.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and to the
I
point.
remember. Go ahead. Yeah, I was just gonna say that because I remember the first game, and people probably know what I'm talking about. Like when the last game against the Orioles, where he made that game-saving catch. Because if he doesn't make that, you're looking at a tie game. That was incredible. Like that was really cool, and it was like, man, like it fired me up. And Goodman has really good defense, and that's something that another thing. Like people look at the bat, but talk about the defense too. It's really really good.
Yeah. Okay, real quick to go with the Gold Glove eligibility, since we got just to go back to that real fast. So since we're talking about Nolan Jones specifically, so here is the player qualifications all for just these for certain positions, because a couple of them are different. Pitchers and catchers are different. For all infielders and outfielders, they must have played in the field for at least 698 total innings to his team's 138th game. This equates to playing in the field for approximately 7.5 innings per game and approximately 76% of his team's games by his team's 138th game. So that's there you have it.
It's a nice little word sandwich.
Yeah, I know. I just wanted to I guess I wanted to read the full dialogue, or the full text, I guess you could say. I'm just trying to, again, it's all, jargon going back and forth, but that's the basic requirement of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, I mean, we had one winner, we had 3 nominees, and I think we should have had a 4th, because I retweeted this. Hopefully base runners learn this season, you might want to think twice before running on our outfield.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because I said my favorite one was when Nolan threw out Acuna at home.
Yeah, that was really. And then there was a video I posted also on my Twitter. I forget what the page is called, but they basically said the Rockies had like the made history with the defense. I think Tom, you might have kind of alluded to it as well, but like the Rockies had the best defensive like throws in baseball history. Like with the arm speed was incredible with Doyle and Nolan Jones. So that's something that a lot of people are going to have to keep an eye on this year. Yeah. Let me see if I have any more comments here. There's another one here. Let me pull it up here. Oh, here it is. Do you think Montero will be traded since KB is our starting first baseman along with Goody? Ooh. Go ahead.
Chris, why don't you go ahead first on this one?
I'm gonna say no, and I kind of was alluding to that a little bit earlier. It's like Hunter Goodman is the younger player, both I think age-wise and in terms of major league experience. Montero was a critical part of the Arenado trade. So obviously they're trying to see what his actual maximum potential is before making a decision on his future with the team. And to this point, he really hasn't had that opportunity yet. I think he showed a majorly improved approach at the plate last year. So I think going into 2024, it would be my assumption that he would get the benefit of the doubt in terms of who's in the lineup on a frequent basis as compared to who's not, which is again why I find the Goodman regularity in right field very interesting, because you could easily throw Chuck in right field on most days to play the field and then put Montero in at DH, or flip-flop KB in right field with Chuck DHing and Montero at first, or something along those lines with some sort of rotation in that regard. So I do think it's, since you want Goodman to get regular playing time, you probably would start him at AAA and allow Montero that DHing type of first base role to start the year. Injuries obviously happen, so Goodman would probably be one of the first guys called up. But I think that's how I'd start the year if I was the front office and the coaching staff as a whole.
Yeah, I commented this on one of our recent podcasts because I think it was part of a Q&A, if I remember correctly, because we went over our projected lineup. If KB was still able to play the outfield on an everyday basis, I think it's a no-brainer Montero's at first base. Or at least that's how I'm seeing it. Again, I'm not seeing behind the scenes as to what's going on. But I do agree with you. His approach changed. I would even go far as to say drastically, because in the beginning part of the season, when he just not as lost as Tovar, but he seemed to kind of not understand fully what pitchers were trying to do to him with sequencing. And he just kind of made a slight adjustment as far as how he, again, how I saw it, how he was seeing pitches out of the pitcher's hand. He was able to recognize breaking balls easier and how not to swing at pitches outside the zone. Mm-hmm. And I do agree. I think there could be some kind of revolving door depending how they want to structure the lineup. Because maybe, again, I don't know if this is a possibility. Maybe there's days where McMahon gets a day off from the field. You move Chris Bryant to third base. He can play third base here and there. Montero can play first. If Goodman's in the lineup up with the team, he can play right. I think it's going to be kind of a revolving door at certain positions, depending, of course, who gets what day off. So to go back and answer the question, I don't think he'll be traded because, Chris, as you pointed out, he was one of the key pieces along with Gomber in that Arenado trade. I don't think there's enough sample size for them to just give up on him that easily. Mm-hmm. And again, this is an evaluation year, so he's going to get some opportunities, especially, unfortunately injuries happen. There's going to be injuries, and that could lead to more opportunities for them to evaluate him.
Yeah, Montero stays for me. And I guess this is kind of talking about like the first base position. There's a video where Michael Toglia is working out at a local, like somewhat of a gym, kind of like performance, kind of like a lab, I guess. And I saw the video. It's just, again, you can see it on Twitter, X, whatever you call it. But you can see Toglia kind of working out. And, I'm excited for Toglia, but like we've talked about before that, he could be the guy that could be heading out with Montero. Goodman kind of here with being with the Rockies and kind of being in that platoon position. I think, in my opinion, Toglia, he was, obviously we know the history of of him getting drafted in the first round from UCLA and how a lot of people were excited about this guy being the next Todd Helton. It's unfortunate to see his strikeout numbers because he played winter ball this year. Strikeout numbers, I think, were still somewhat high. Somewhat concerning, and that needs to come down. But yet the power is there. I mean, his OPS was good. I think this during the winter ball, there's some numbers that kind of looked good from improving. And in my opinion, this is just me, but I think he needs to lose a little bit more weight because like a lot of players, sometimes you just need to lose a little bit more. And he has a little bit of a tummy on him. No offense to Toglia. But he could lose a little bit of weight. And I think Toglia, again, I still have high hopes for him, but it just, I don't know. Part of me feels like it won't work out here. But also, I don't know. What do I know? But like, it's one of those things that I've just kind of looked at. I think the swing could be a little bit, changed a little. And here's the thing. We never really have talked about this, but the Rockies, they have, I think, like really, really soon. If not, it's already open. But the Rockies they have a lab down in Scottsdale at their spring training facility where they can do pitching, hitting, whatever. They have basically a pitching / hitting lab that they just recently built, and it's going to allow players to go down there, whenever to kind of change or kind of edit their swings or pitches or whatever. And I think that's a great idea, and kind of look at analytics, which is great. And so I think that he could do that maybe in spring training because, again, I really like Tobia, but I just don't know if he's going to be able to be on this roster any longer if he just continues to do what he's been doing with striking out quite a bit at a high rate. And yeah, he has some power. He got a couple home runs this past year, but I don't know, like, what do you think about Toglia's future here? I just don't think it's very as clear as Montero and Goodman's. I don't know.
I'll put it this way. If I had to move one of the three, Montero, Goodman, or Toglia, I'd probably move Toglia. He's gotten, I think, probably the most amount of reps between all of them, right? Because he played a lot in the outfield and right field, especially, 2 years ago, end of 2022. So he has some reps. He has some more time under him as compared to guys like Montero, especially Goodman. So I think it's hard for me. See, I saw him hit a home run, by the way, at the Futures game. What was it, when it was hosted here? So I was like, whoa, that guy's super cool. You're telling me he's in our system? What? Yeah. Can't wait for him to get here.
I watched that game too. It was awesome because it was like the deepest part of the ballpark. I'm like, hey, this guy's our future first baseman. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, a year later, it's like, oh.
Yeah, dead left center field. It was crazy. That was fun to watch. But it gets back to the point, right? Is that he definitely has the potential. That's unquestioned. You get drafted where he was drafted if you don't have some sort of potential. I mean, that just goes without saying. But I think if he's going to work out here, he might have to drop one of the handedness, the sides of the plate that he swings the bat from. He's going to have to stop switch hitting and just pick a side, I think. So I don't know which side specifically, like statistically, he's better from, but to me, it feels like he is more comfortable from the right side. Would you agree with this?
I want to say it's the left side, in my opinion, because I think he's got more home runs on the left side as left-handed swing, because I think that's his natural stance, I guess, where I think, if I'm correct, because again, I'm not a guy that's, following it all the time, and, people can check up on this, but I want to say his numbers are a little bit better hitting left-handed. Again, like for those who are listening or watching, you can check that out. Let us know. But I think
I can tell you. I can tell you it's the left side because he's a natural left. He's a natural lefty.
Oh, is he? Oh, okay.
He's a lefty.
Okay.
So if I was him, because who was it? Alex Rodriguez once said this in a segment with Frank Thomas and Pete Rose. He said it's very difficult as a switch hitter because Pete Rose is a switch hitter. It's very difficult to do it from two sides. I mean, taking care of one swing is very hard enough, but two is quite a task. And how Pete Rose did it and get as many hits as he did, it's beyond me. But the point is, but that's what it is. He's a natural lefty.
All right, that would make sense. It feels like when he takes left-handed swings, he pulls off on the ball sometimes. So it's like it looks better, like technically his left side does, which would, I guess, make sense. He is left-handed naturally. But I mean, I guess so he'd probably have to just pick left-handed hitting and just refine that because again, the technique is there. I think there's a spot for him on this team based on his positional versatility, and the Rockies like having positionally versatile guys on their team. So I think we'd like to believe he can succeed here. I'm just not sure if they're going to take the right steps to optimize his likelihood of succeeding.
I do agree. If I was going to get rid of one or likely to trade one of those three, it would be him because I see he has the most. This may or may not make sense. I think he has maybe because he's a switch hitter, he presents more value in trade because again, teams want guys with not just the positional versatility, but also ambidextrous hitters always is a plus. However, if we were to keep him and I was in his ear, I would agree with you, Chris and Steven as well. I would say pick a side. If I was him, I pick left-handed because there's more right-handed pitchers than there are left-handed pitchers in baseball. So that presents more of a better when it comes to playing the matchups. Again, that's if he does pick the left side, it depends how he does against lefties and do they see him as a platoon guy or as an everyday guy going against lefties and righties. And again, if he's a platoon guy, it's better to be lefty because you face more righties than lefties. So I personally still think he has plenty of value with the versatility. How do I say this? It's just I want to give him the benefit of the doubt because he still has the potential. I haven't lost faith in the guy yet, but he is kind of blocked at this point in the positions he has, whether it's left, right field, or first base. There's a log jam at his positions. And again, if somebody gets hurt and they see an opportunity for him, I give him a shot. And if he plays every day for, let's say 30 to 40 days, and you make a judgment call based on that, again, I'm not making the lineups every day. That's Bud Black's responsibility. But that's how I see it. Mm-hmm. And he does have value, but if you're going to remove one of those guys, I do agree it would most likely be him. Because again, this is me, if I'm a GM of another team, there's more reasons to see why I would acquire him as opposed to the other two.
100%. Yeah. And I guess we'll just like kind of quick go of the outfield again. Like, we're not going to, spend a lot of time, but just want to quickly say that because just the other day, we posted on our Instagram, some top prospects or some prospects to keep your eye on this year. And I got some comments of people saying, we have a lot of outfielders. We need to make some trades. And you could say that about the infield too. I mean, maybe Toglia, maybe one more, but the Rockies, they're in a position. I think one thing that they're kind of doing is smart is getting some of these veterans like they did yesterday with adding Dakota Hudson and Austin. I was going to say Austin Wentz. He's not back, unfortunately, but they got Jacob Stallings, and those guys are tradable pieces. I mean, you look at the contract, you look at the length, of course, and you say tradable. That's easy. That they're going to trade those guys, and the Rockies, we could see a very, very active trade deadline. As a matter of fact, this past year, the Rockies were one of the most active teams at the trade deadline. I mean, they had a bunch of trade. They traded away Brad Hand, Pierce Johnson, Mike Moustakas, right after the game, the famous 25-1 game. Rockies fans remember that one. And so, they made a bunch of trades, and, it was sad to see some of these players leave because I really like Moustakas, and who knows? I mean, maybe I want to, isn't Moustakas still, no, he's still getting paid by the Reds, right? And so he's still going to stay with the Angels.
Yeah, because they DFA'd him, and so they're still paying him.
I was hoping he was going to be a free agent because honestly, I kind of like, because the Rockies, they need a left-handed bat on that bench, and hopefully it's not Harold Castro or Jerkson Profar. Please, like I like those guys. They have a great smile, great spirit, great people, but it's just the Rockies, they cannot afford guys that put up negative WAR on the field. They cannot afford that. And if you want to win more games, don't get negative WAR players, period. But yeah, the Rockies, they're going to have to swallow a tough pill because they're going to have to let go of potentially some good outfield prospects. But I do know this. I don't think they're going to trade Yanquiel Fernandez. I think they're going to keep him. Guys I could see getting traded, even though it kind of pains me to say this, I could see Jordan Beck going. I could see Sterling Thompson going. And maybe Benny Montgomery. That's a name that's been kind of popping up in trade rumors, in terms of for pitching. So the Rockies, they're going to be pretty active, I think, at the trade deadline. And I think we're already expecting, and I'm sure a lot of projections are saying, I'm not sure if Fangraphs has that. Do they have the record projections for this year by any chance?
Not yet. Those I don't believe come out until somewhere around spring training.
Okay. Yeah. Because I wouldn't be surprised if they give us, 100 plus losses, because a lot of people have us as the worst National League team. And that's to be expected, I think, because you're looking at teams like the Nationals. They might be a fun team to watch this year. We'll see. They could try to sneak into somewhat of a wild card race. And then you look at the National League Central. Man, that division is going to be kind of fun to watch with the Reds and the Pirates. Those teams are getting better, so it's pretty safe to say that the Rockies are probably going to be the worst team in the National League this year. But hey, I mean, you're going to be able to get a number 3 draft pick in this upcoming draft, and if the Rockies have another tough year this year, they might have a very good chance of getting one of the guys I really want in 2025, and that is Ethan Holiday, who is the brother of Jackson Holiday, who is the #1 prospect for the Orioles. And that's a podcast for another day, because I get kind of nerdied out with, the Holiday family, because, I'm a big Matt Holiday guy. I was, a big fan of him when he was with the Rockies. And so, but yeah, the Rockies, they're going to have to make a lot of trades. And I think, of course, with veterans, but also not only that, but I think if they want to make sure that they kind of free up some of the spots at first base, right field, in the outfield, and plus, not only that, but you have to look at, I wouldn't be surprised if some of these guys already start showing up midway through the season or later in the season. So you have to make trades. So the Rockies just can't sit on their hands and say, well, they're going to have to make trades. You can't make the mistakes like they did a couple years ago with some of the other trades that they made that weren't the greatest. So
the one thing I'll say about drafting Ethan Holiday, this is kind of a funny little tidbit. If you draft him, just be prepared to deal with Scott Boras, because that's going to be his agent. He represents Jackson, and he represented Matt when he was a player. So not that it's a problem, but just just be prepared to deal with him if you draft his clients. Exactly. For those who are watching, Chris, you made the money symbol. Yep, be ready to pay for it when he comes to his clients. So
yes, sir.
Anyway, just real quick, last couple comments I'll make about the position player stats. The guy projected to lead the Rockies in batting average is Charlie Blackmon at 277. Funny little tidbit, they actually project Brendan Rodgers to play 134 games.
Yeah, but we need Brendan Rodgers to be healthy, and man, we're still kind of like Rymack, we're still waiting for that big year for Brendan Rodgers, but he
does have the Gold Glove in his trophy case.
Yeah, and I think that's going to allow a lot of teams to be interested in him maybe at the deadline, because Amador, he's again a podcast for another time, but Amador, he could be a real problem in the big leagues, and with the numbers he can put up, and especially on base. I mean, a lot of people have him winning a bunch of batting titles once he comes up here, and that's really exciting. That's some awesome news. Hopefully, fingers crossed, knock on wood, and then I don't want to jinx anything, but anyways, there's a lot of Rodgers is going to be another guy that's going to be a tough pill to swallow, but I think the Rockies are going to probably move him. You kind of have to, if you feel like Amador is your guy, absolutely, call him up at the end of the year, or either be your starting second baseman next year. Where Rodgers, it's been injuries. It's really have hurt him the past couple of years, and so I don't know. There's a bunch of players like Rymack. Like I said, Rymack, Rodgers. We kind of have to see that 1 year where, hey, can you prove yourself that you're going to be built? Because really, a couple of years ago, like Bill Schmidt was like, yeah, you two guys are going to be the big, faces of the franchise before, of course, Chris Bryant came here, but they haven't really proven themselves to be the big, part of this Rockies team. Really, we're kind of waiting to see that,
Yeah. B-Rod has 2 more years of arbitration eligibility before he officially becomes a free agent. Am I correct about that?
I'll look it up real fast, but I believe
I know it's this year, of course. And then I want to say, is it? I think this is his last year of arbitration. Then next year he's a free agent, I think.
Is it something like it?
He's arbitration eligible. His first arbitration eligibility was 2023. He's a free agent after 2025.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, because last year was his first arbitration contract, right? So that would make sense.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's interesting though. So I guess that does give Amador some time to finish his development in the minor leagues, because he's at AA right now, right? So that's progression-wise, it's like a year or two away from being a contributor at the major league level. So I don't think there's a ton of rush to trade him, but I wouldn't be surprised if Rodgers was traded sometime in the next year or so.
And then
is Amador? Is Amador? Is he starting the year in AA? Probably.
I think he'll be in Hartford for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and some people were like, "What about Sterling Thompson or Jordan Beck?" Those guys are starting in AA as well, because they just for Jordan Beck, he spent most of the year in AA. We could see him AAA, but I mean, it all depends on what other roster moves that the Rockies make. How their depth in AAA is in the outfield. Of course, Drew Romo, he's starting the year at the catching position in Albuquerque. That's for sure. And like Tom and I have talked about before, I don't see Romo coming up here at all this year. I mean, he could, but I just don't see him getting the call up here until at least September, maybe until next year. I don't
Well,
know.
on that real quick side note, while we're talking about catchers, just real fast, the leader in on-base percentage is projected to be Nolan Jones at 355, Hunter Goodman at 485 slugging. And to go back to the two catchers, when it comes to games played, they're projecting Diaz to play 87 games and Stallings to play 51. And they actually have Drew Romo here for 12.
Really? Wow. Okay.
So Fangraphs thinks he may get that September call for a cup of coffee.
That's my favorite word. I like this. That's my favorite phrase. I love the phrase of get a cup of coffee.
I can see why.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's your basic rundown of the position players. Whenever you guys want to, I guess we can talk about it more. If you guys want to switch to pitching, we can do that too.
Yeah, we can let's do that because we're kind of running out of time here. Let's kind of quickly move over to the pitching. We don't have to necessarily do the bullpen side of things. We can just kind of talk very quickly, like 1 minute each for each pitcher or less, something like that, and just kind of then move on to our last little segment here of the signings that we got yesterday.
Okay, I'll quickly do a quick rundown. When it comes to the projected, obviously we know who's pretty much the projected stars are going to be. Innings pitched, the leaders projected to be Kyle Freeland with 170, and rounding out the top 5 is Quantrill 160, Gomber 152, Hudson 136, and Feltner at 121, and just right behind him for 6 is Lambert with 120. Starts, nobody is projected. Actually, sorry, excuse me. Nobody's projected to have over 30 starts. The highest is Freeland at 29, Gomber and Quantrill at 28. When it comes to ERA, you've got the lowest. Actually, excuse me. Hold on. Let me go back. Sorry. For the starters, the lowest ERA projected is Feltner at 5.40, and the highest projected to be Quantrill at 5.92. When it comes, nobody under 5. When it comes
Goodness gracious.
When it comes to the starters, even Lambert, they're projecting at 5.57. So yeah, but I've talked about this on a previous podcast. I just want to talk about this briefly. With the acquisitions of Quantrill and Hudson, these are two guys that do use the sinker quite frequently. Hudson uses it about 38% of the time, and Quantrill, I believe, was 26% of the time. And I've talked about how I would like to see the Rockies have guys who focus on keeping the ball on the ground. Hudson is projected to have a 51.6 ground ball rate this year, and all the other Rockies starting pitchers are projected to have one, at least the lowest being 41.5, and the rest is projected to be between that and 51. So to me, that's encouraging because I've talked about, you don't want the ball up in the air in Coors Field, keep it down, and we do have multiple Gold Glove candidates around our defense. So if our pitchers keep the ball in the ballpark, not over the fence, and put the ball in play, our defense, I think, could really back them up and make a lot of plays and keep the runs to a minimum, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I'm going to add one more factor there to your note about the Rockies adding pitching that throws sinkers effectively, right? At least as effectively as one can for pitchers that the Rockies get. It's the spin rate of the pitch too, and this is actually something I talked about a lot on my other podcast before I stopped doing it. The idea that you can just go out and get a guy who throws a sinker, it's good in theory, but ultimately there are certain things you can do to optimize their potential for success, among which throwing the ball with less spin. And major props to the front office for noticing this. And that's one of the reasons I think this offseason has been very underratedly beneficial for the Rockies as a whole. You go out and you get Quantrill, who throws a low spin rate fastball, beneficial in terms of the way it plays at altitude and the less variability it has when they switch venues from Coors Field to away from Coors Field. With the greater spin, it's about, I think on average, like 2 to 3 inches worth of differential between pitching here at Coors Field versus another location that's closer to sea level. So obviously lowering the spin rate, you would figure it does bring some more consistency in that regard. Cal Quantrill fits that mold. Dakota Hudson, who we'll probably talk about in a little bit, fits that mold. So it's good to see the front office going out and getting guys who do not only get the ball on the ground with that sinker ball, but also throw it at a lower spin rate, which helps their consistency as a whole.
Yeah, I agree. And the Rockies, plain simple, they need pitching. Was their number one thing going into this offseason, get pitching. And I like Dakota Hudson. And I know that you look at some of his numbers and his injury history. He had a couple Tommy Johns, and people are like, "Oh, that's a wasted." Well, listen, it's a 1-year deal. It's there. I don't think I'm going to use this phrase. 1-year deals are not necessarily a bad thing because again, you could I mean, I think it's a pretty cheap contract too. It's like, was it $1 million something?
It's like 1.5, I
Yeah,
think.
1.5.
1.5. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so that's a pretty cheap deal, and there's no guarantee that he's going to be on the roster. I mean, it's a 1-year deal, which is kind of giving him, hey, you're most likely going to be on the opening day roster because he's already on the 40 man, he's on the active roster. But and I think there's some people who are also kind of frustrated that the Rockies are not going to give their shots to Noah Davis or Peter Lambert. That's not necessarily the case. Those guys are still going to get their opportunities in spring training. And Lambert, who I really, really like, we saw a lot of good stuff from him this past year. Good strikeout numbers, when he was on the mound doing well, throwing dots to home plate. Noah Davis, another guy that, I'm really high on. The Rockies, they're going to get those guys their pitching time in spring training, going to get closer looks. And don't forget about Ryan Rolison, who like Tom and me, we both talked about last week. Ryan Rolison, he's healthy now. I think he's starting to get back up. The only hope for him is, can he stay healthy? And it's unfortunate for him because I feel like the Rockies have kind of said, hey, they're not necessarily put him on the on the shelf necessarily, but they're looking more towards Lambert, Davis, heck, maybe even Jeff Criswell, who's in AAA. That's another guy I really like. When they traded, uh, what's his name, Chad Smith. That's right, Chad Smith. A year
Yeah.
ago to the
Mhm.
Athletics. And the Athletics, I think they DFA'd him. So, I feel bad for the guy, but in some ways we won that trade. So that's something positive for the Rockies fans here. But the Rockies are going to give their shots to some of the young pitchers. It's not like, because they got Dakota Hudson, they're going to just let go of the other guys. No, they're going to get playing time. And the Rockies, most likely, they're gonna need those two guys because knowing the Rockies, you're going to have occasionally, the Rockies, there hasn't been really one starter really that has been healthy the entire season. You're going to have, Freeland or somebody get out for a week or two with an injury, with a strain or something like that, right? It happens all the time in baseball. So the Rockies are going to need those two guys, if not Rolison as well, to kind of be there in AAA or just be up there with the club, as an emergency starter. And so what the Rockies do, and Dakota Hudson, it's a very safe pick. And I liked how you commented on, I believe it was, I think it was you that commented on on signing, how it's somewhat of a safe option for the Rockies because it's not very expensive. Gives Dakota Hudson a chance, who was, by the way, a top prospect in St. Louis, and is very close friends with Austin Gomber when Austin Gomber was in St. Louis with the Cardinals before the trade. So I like that one. And then so I like what the Rockies are doing. They have a firm plan. They know what they're doing with the pitching side, and that's what they're doing. And of course, they're going to get more pitching once we get closer to the draft, and once in the draft, and then once we get some trades. So Rockies, they're going to get their pitching.
Yeah, it's good. An underrated move in the bullpen too, besides bringing back guys like Matt Cook and I guess technically Ty Block, because he started a lot towards the back end of the year, which is when he was his best. He started the year in the bullpen and was really not very good. Got himself designated for assignment. Jalen Beeks, that was another solid move for the exact same reason we were just talking about. I know, great move, fantastic. Go pick up a guy off of the waiver wire from the Rays, I think it was. Guy who throws a fastball, again, low spin rate. Good sinker in theory. All this stuff looks like it has some potential. Obviously, he didn't have a great year last year, which is why he was I think he was DFA'd, right? Probably something along that line.
Yes, he was DFA. He was a DFA, I believe.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, obviously, the numbers don't really look great, but there's potential. That's the point.
Just one quick thing about the pitching: they have 20 pitchers to projected throw at least 30 innings this year.
Yeah,
so expect a lot of different pitchers to be on the mound.
And then I saw something today. MLB Trade Rumors put out Brent Suter is getting some interest from other teams. Do you think the Rockies could be one of those teams? Because the Rockies last year, they didn't trade him because there was somewhat interest in both sides to get an extension. I think it would be nice. However, it's kind of funny how baseball works because whenever you have a nice year, the following year is terrible. And that's the way baseball is. I kind of would like to see Brent Suter come back, but Brent Suter actually had a solid year and his numbers at Coors Field were really good. And I kind of want him back, but at the same time, though, I think the Rockies, they see something in Jalen Beeks, and I commend them for signing. For picking him up off of waivers from the Rays. But it's just like, should the Rockies consider bringing him back? I'd welcome it. Just the way he performed this past year, I'd like that. I don't know,
Well,
Tom. What do you think? Do you
well,
think
they
the
got
Rockies
well,
bring
they
him back?
got three. Well, excluding Freeland and Gomber because they'll be in the rotation. They only have one, two, three other lefties currently on the 40 man. So it's an idea. I'm not sure exactly what the other left-handed free agent options are out there, except for Montgomery's a starter, and Aroldis Chapman. Please don't sign that guy. Oh, and and Josh. I forgot Josh Hader's still out there. I forgot who. I think if I remember correctly, I picked as the Rockies as a sleeper pick for him, but ultimately I think he won't come here. I mean, it's you can throw your name out there to see what he's interested in. It depends if he wants to go what he was looking for in terms of team to join, but it's an idea. I mean, yeah, for sure, because it's never a bad thing to have too many arms, but also it's never a bad thing to have more than 3 or 4 lefties, considering if you want to play the matchups on innings now.
Yep.
Yeah, and that certainly does fill a need. That was the point I was going to make. Exactly. We only have really one lefty technically in the bullpen who would be on the major league roster, because I don't think Evan Justice is going to start the year on the major league roster. Probably not. So that's important. I'm kind of a Brett Suter fan somehow, some way. I think Justin will remember, or Steven will remember this.
Yeah.
Justin, another one of our friends, projected
Brent
that he hates so much for no good reason other than that. Well, he's Brent Suter, I guess. And at the beginning of 2023, I said I actually liked that signing, and Justin predicted his downfall and just utter destruction. And I got the last laugh. I said at the beginning of the season, I was like, I could see Brent being like a 3.5 ERA guy this season, which is solid. And I was not disappointed again. But it's that way when you think about the role he fills too, right? Because he's a guy who only throws really about 89, 90 miles an hour, but then he drops that like 75 mile an hour changeup or slider on you, and you're like, well, what the heck, man? What's going on? So he does really provide a lot of versatility to the Rockies bullpen in that perspective, because we have guys like Lawrence, guys like Bard who throw mid to upper 90s coming out of that bullpen. Kinley too, if you wanted to throw his name in there, he's probably going to have a big setup role this year. But I think a guy like Suter really does fit both the need to have another lefty in the bullpen, and on top of that, just a guy who can throw teams off. Dude was throwing 75 mile an hour changeups down the middle and getting foul balls on it. Like, it is crazy. It's crazy. So I wouldn't be too opposed to re-signing Brent Suter.
He did a great job. Like, whenever the Rockies had those like 3-4 inning blow ups and they had to replace the starting pitcher, and he would come in for 2 or 3 innings, he was amazing. I mean, for him to do that, it's quite awesome for him to see that, and commendable. But could he start? I mean, the Rockies, they need starting pitchers, so could he start? I don't know.
He could throw multiple innings. I know that he can throw 2, maybe 3, depending how many pitches he throws in the first 2 innings that he's on the mound. I could see that. I could see that being a possibility, because all relievers are pretty much former starters. So
are there any players that we should talk about before we kind of head into?
Well, I guess real quick, I'll just throw this out there. Do you guys want to guess the projected saves leader for the Rockies this year?
Justin Lawrence.
It's got to be Lawrence, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's projected to throw 21. They project Kinley's actually going to get some save opportunities and convert 8. Bard only 3, and Bird at 1, and that's it. Nobody else.
Yeah, sounds about right.
So there's, it's not, at least it's not going to be a closer by committee, quote unquote. They're going. I think Bud Black, by the end of spring training, he's going to have one guy picked, and I think it's going to be Lawrence.
I could see Bard having a big bounce back year. Again, like I said, it's like baseball is like one year you have a good year, next year you're terrible. Following year you have another all-star type season. Hoping that happens to Bard, but I mean, he still has one. This is his last year of his contract, I believe.
I'm looking that up because I'm curious myself.
Yeah, same.
It's
his last year.
Yes, this is it.
Yeah.
Correct.
Last one.
So I'm curious to see how well he does. I don't think they're gonna do it like another extension. I think with his age and with everything that's going on, I think this is it. And it would be nice to see him retire in a Rockies uniform. I think that's I don't think they would trade him unless if he's having a huge breakout year, named to the All-Star team. But Bard, keep an eye on him as well. Lawrence, a big guy. I'm huge on him. He's the future closer, I think, of this Rockies team. With that, Sweeper. That's right, sweeper.
Mhm.
Keep an eye on that. I mean, I still need to get the T-shirt. Where if Justin's watching this or listening, hey Justin, hit me up. I need one of those T-shirts. Um, like the guy, he's gonna be so good. I mean, he's still young, and I understand that. Oh, he's gonna be a mediocre guy. No, this guy, from what I remember, man, he was so good at the start of the season. Yeah, he had a few bumps here and there, but he's so good. And he, like with some of his pitches, and one of the nice things too is I remember when he came up, and I'm sure Tom and you, Chris, remember how his velocity was crazy. It was like 100
Yeah.
plus, and he noticed that. It doesn't have to be necessarily velocity. I just need, have more movement, because there's one like velocity and movement are two different things, right? And he chose movement, which is a much better option, because velocity, like hitters can catch up to velocity, right? I mean, people can hit Aroldis Chapman. I mean, if Altuve can do it, cheater, but like anybody can do it, So, I just feel like Lawrence, he's going to be a big guy. He's going to be an awesome, and I think he's going to be the big closer for the Rockies. I think he's going to have a great career. A guy that I think we kind of forgot to mention is Lucas Gilbreth. Don't forget about him. I think he should be back this year. I know he had Tommy John surgery at the start of last spring, right around spring training, when spring training was about to start. So he should be coming back to the bullpen this year, hopefully, if not middle toward the season. So that's another left hand. Maybe the Rockies are just going to sit with Beeks and in the bullpen there, and maybe another guy, lefty. And of course, like you mentioned, Evan Justice, he might be in there, he might not, but I expect he'll be in AAA. But yeah, it's just some guys keep an eye out. I mean, Lucas Gilbreth, he's going to be a late inning guy, but who knows? Maybe he could be somewhat of a, because I do remember at one point, I think it wasn't at one point in 2022, he got some opportunities to close out games. And I'm not sure. I don't have the stats in front of me, but I'm not sure how well he did as a closer.
He is projected to throw 48 innings this year.
Okay, so
wow,
yeah,
okay.
about midway through. So yeah, like right around the All-Star break, maybe a little bit even before that, which would be amazing, because Gilbreth could be he was solid, before he got hurt. And so keep your eye out for him. But yeah, there's really the pitchers, and that's really what we're only going to be looking at right now. And we've kind of already gone through the hitters. So again, like, is there another player that we should like, hey, we haven't really talked about this guy or pitcher? I think we've basically covered almost everybody.
Well, one little comment I'll make is they actually have German Marquez on here projected to throw 1 inning.
Nice.
Bullpen?
So, yeah, well, I mean, I haven't seen any update as far as how his recovery is going. So
yeah, I think people say that he's probably going to be out for the entire season. Senzatella, well, Marquez got injured before Senzatella, so yeah, I could see Marquez being out on the mound by September, maybe like the final few weeks. But Senzatella, I think he'll be out for the entire year. I think, just because with the injury where it happened, it was like in early May this past year. So yeah, I think it's probably going to be more. I think Marquez is going to be back before Senzatella. I think the way how it works. I mean, sometimes rehab is so short now. Like Bryce Harper, for him to do what he did in just a matter of months is incredible. Like, it's just the way he was able to rehab, come back, play first base, and hit. I mean, come on, like, pretty incredible stuff there. So I don't know, maybe. And the funny thing too is, I guess we'll quickly mention this, but the funny thing is that the Rockies, they got Senzatella and Marquez, they got their surgeries from the Rangers doctors, not the Rockies doctors. So it's like, okay, so it's like, what's going on there? So I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, interesting stuff. It said 1 inning, right, for Marquez?
And Senzatella is on here too for 1 inning.
Oh man. Okay. So, and they said Bard's going to get 3 saves, right?
Hold on, let me just find where he is.
I think they
did. Yeah, they project Bard to throw 63 innings and get and convert 3 saves. Yes.
Beautiful. So what we've heard is that we're going to see Marquez and Senzatella both come in to get a hold for 2 of Bard's 3 saves of the year. Glad we sorted that out. I'm looking very forward to seeing it.
Even better. Okay, so listen to this. Okay, so you have Bard come in, Game 5 of the NLDS against the Dodgers. Then you have Marquez. Senzatella comes in for 1 inning, and then you have Marquez close out the Game 5 NLDS. Rockies move on to beat the Dodgers to the NLCS. How about that?
Oh man.
Well,
guy
I
can
mean,
dream.
you can, especially I do miss seeing Marquez as a good old Uncle Charlie. I love his curveball. So
Like arguably one of the best in baseball. Same thing with Gomber too. Like I remember 2021, man, like nobody could hit that Gomber curveball in Coors Field.
Mhm.
the only difference is, of course, they have different movements. Marquez can throw 11.5 and 12.6, or I think where Gomber I've only seen straight 12.6, which is not a bad thing.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I just hope that Gomber just keep the weight off your shoulders because he felt the pressure of being the one of the two marquee guys for the Nolan trade.
Hmm.
Just if I was in his ear, just Chris, to your point, focus on not because he's not a power pitcher, which again, I don't want a lot of power arms on the roster, or I'm not a fan of having your trying to encompass your entire pitching staff of quote unquote power arms. Because again, that can lead to more Tommy John surgeries. And I still believe that there's something to be said when it comes to you don't have to try it. I don't like the max effort stuff. You don't need to have velocity, I don't think, to be successful at the major league level, in my opinion.
No, that's true. It's a lot harder here, right? Because a lot of
Mhm.
those guys who do throw lower in terms of velocity do tend to have higher spin, which does help them a little bit in that regard. We just
Mhm.
drafted one this last summer, didn't we? It was Sean Sullivan. Only throws
Mhm.
like 91, 92 miles an hour with his fastball, but he has like an elite, like 2,600 RPM spin rate on that pitch. It's like insane. But yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, to your point about the curveballs, I think Marquez's curveball is like super hard though. It's like 86, 87 miles an hour, is it not?
It's somewhere in the mid 80s, I believe, something like that.
Yeah, so that helps him a little bit. There's like almost no velocity difference between his curveball and his slider, which is kind of funny. I think that's kind of hurt him over the years, is what the statistics show. But either way, it is fun to watch at least. Like, what the heck what was that? What did I just see? So it's
Also,
cool.
like specifically, also his arm angle. I just find that it's a very interesting angle to have a curveball of his that he throw the depth he has on his curveball from that angle that he has. He's not a sidearm guy. He's more a 3/4 guy. But just his
Mhm.
release, it just seems odd how he puts that much rotate. Maybe again, I was not a big time pitcher when I played baseball. It just seems strange to me from that arm angle how he puts so much depth on his curveball.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not an expert. I'm not a pitching coach, nor was I a major league pitcher. So I don't. It's kind of still new information to me.
Yeah, I feel.
But
Yeah.
anyway, so that's the basic rundown of what this. Unless you want to go over anything other, that's the basics when it comes to the pitching staff.
Yeah, pitching staff basically done. Again, we kind of got to move quickly here. With the last couple minutes that we have here, let's kind of move over to what the Rockies did yesterday, and we kind of briefly touched about this, how the Rockies signed Jacob Stallings and Dakota Hudson to 1-year deals. Again, like we kind of iterated before, it's a safe sign. Both signings are safe. Jacob Stallings, you're not signing him because of his bat. You're signing him because of his play calling, his his defense behind the plate. And he won the Gold Glove a couple years ago behind the plate, and some people have kind of forgotten that. And plus plus Diaz and Stallings were teammates in Pittsburgh a few years back, and so close friendship there. I think that's a good tandem there behind the plate. So yeah, you're not going to get a whole ton of offense, but again, it's really, I think a lot of it has to do with the pitching and kind of like the relationship between the catcher and the pitcher. Jacob Stalling, again, calls really good games behind the plate, very good framer. Really like that move. And then, of course, we already talked about Dakota Hudson, how, 1.5 million, 1-year deal. Could see the Rockies move him, especially if he has somewhat of a big year with the Rockies. If he has a ERA of 3 or even 4, I could see him having somewhere right around a 4.5 ERA this year. I really like some of his. I like his delivery. Looks kind of snazzy. I like that word too. Snazzy is a word I like to use as well. I like Hudson. He, again, top prospect in St. Louis a number of years back, and kind of gives you a number 4, number 5 guy. But again, they're going to look at Lambert and Noah Davis. So my thoughts overall, good moves for the Rockies, and it's in some ways it's screaming trade, but I like it. The Rockies, they're being active. So that's my thoughts. So yeah.
Yeah.
Go
Tom,
ahead,
what do you
Chris.
think?
Go ahead, Chris. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree. I like both of those signings. They both fill a need, right? Starting pitching and backup catching. I like Hudson because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think he had like 16 wins in like his second, or actually maybe in his rookie season. Am I mistaken?
Yeah,
Like
it was
2019?
2019, I think. Yeah, 2019. Yeah.
Yeah, finished like 5th in Rookie of the Year
Rookie of the
voting.
Year, yeah, I saw that, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And so
he's
he
super
has
cool.
good numbers, and he has good, good history, and he has that with him, for his I guess his reward, I guess, on his little desk there. So yeah.
In
Yeah.
19, he went 16-7 with an ERA of 3.36.
Yeah,
Mhm.
solid. So
Yeah.
he's shown his potential, right? It's just unfortunate it didn't work out in St. Louis, and I'm sure there are a variety of reasons why that was the case. But to have a guy who has done that and at a very minimum can look back and say, yeah, I am that good of a pitcher, I can do it again, is super helpful, especially for a team that does need starting pitching. Again, like I said earlier, he fits all the checklist items that I have in terms of a pitcher that I think can succeed in purple pinstripes, both playing at Coors Field and away from Coors Field, with the spin rates from that perspective, with the stuff. I also like Stallings. Stallings was good. I think it was actually Tom. I was listening to one of the episodes that you guys did in like mid-December, and that was like the guy that you explained the most about. So it felt like you were like pseudo predicting that was going to be the case. So I'll give you credit for that prediction, if that's a thing. But that was good. I enjoyed that signing. Again, not a huge offensive guy, which is unfortunate. A lot like Austin Wynns, but I think it actually a tad bit worse offensively than Austin Wynns was from an on base, from an all things actually considered offensive perspective last year.
Yeah.
Besides maybe home runs, but he's good. It's good to see that type of guy who, again, I think he was an all-star in like 2021. Was he not? Something like that.
I believe so. I have to look. I am looking at the wrong page. I'll look that up.
I think he was.
I think it was, yeah, and also he won a Gold Glove, I think, too. So
Yep.
that.
Good blocking catcher too. That's what I noticed when he was at his peak defensively. He was elite at blocking, which again, with the Colorado Rockies, pass balls tend to be an issue, especially with younger pitchers that we'll probably start to see in the next few years, or maybe even this season, likely this season, because again, he's really only on a 1-year contract. So all of that considered, I do think that was one of the best signings they could have made to fill that need at backup catcher.
Yeah, I agree.
He was not an all-star. He won the Gold Glove in 2021 with Pittsburgh.
Oh, I thought he was an all-star in one of those years. Maybe it was 2020.
Yeah.
But I don't think
he was an all-star for some reason. I agree with Chris. It's like it kind of felt like, because those years all of a sudden are like now a blur. Like I'm heading into 2024 and like my brain is freezing. I think Chris can agree. Like our brain's like, what? He's not an all-star.
I'm ready to go. I know that's the thing, because in MLB The Show 20, he had a special card, and I'm a huge MLB The Show fan.
Right? Yeah.
Me too, yeah.
He had a card, and it was either 2020 or 2021 for something like all-star related. I know that's a thing. It has to be. But we'll check on that later, I guess.
Yeah.
We can send a letter to Baseball Reference, because according to their page, he only has the 1 Gold Glove with the Pittsburgh Pirates in 2021. Listed on his page.
I'm probably wrong. That's probably what I'm thinking of then.
Well, I mean, catcher. Because I swore I could have heard the same thing. Maybe I'm thinking of a different Pittsburgh. Maybe Pirates catcher. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking. I can't be thinking of Russell Martin, because they're definitely two different kind of players. But because you have one defense, one more offense, so that would have been a complete mishap on my part. But yeah, to go to me. I do like both signings. They, as you pointed, Chris, they fill two, I think, big needs for them. As I do like Hudson specifically. I think Blake Street Banner did mention this on one of their posts. He is, and it's true, I'm looking at his Baseball Savant page. He throws a sinker 38% of the time, the slider 32% of the time, four-seam fastball 21% of the time, and then the old Uncle Charlie and changeup less than 5% of the time. So he's a 3-pitch pitcher, which is good. As I always say, when it comes to starting pitchers, you need to have at least 3 pitches you can throw, and you feel confident to throw in any count. And I do like his sinker is his primary pitch. So again, it goes to my hopes that you want to try and keep the ball on the ground. And I do agree with you, Chris. People are, I guess, there's a number of people who are saying this is a bad signing because he's had such he's been bad in recent years. Well, he has dealt with injuries, and he has that track record of says, hey, I can be successful at the major league level. And I get, and good change of scenery is good. Plus he does have a career ground ball rate of 55.1%. He does not, wait, what was it? I was looking at one more thing. He does not have a high walk rate. Oh yeah. He doesn't have a very high walk rate, which is good. I like the signing. And when it comes to Stallings, I do look at how the contract is structured. It's 1 year with a mutual option for 2025. So this tells me, so you got both your catchers who were projected to be the major leagues, the 2 catchers on the roster on opening day. Diaz and Stallings are both free agents after this season, but with Stalling having the option, I think Bill Schmidt is looking at that as they're not going to bring Diaz back, presuming they feel Romo is ready to come up, and then Romo could be the starting catcher for 2025, and Stallings they'll opt in, but then of course with a mutual option, Stallings has to opt in as well for them to pick up that option. So they could see Romo as the everyday catcher, and then Stallings being his backup. That's how I see them with how they structured this deal. And again, I do agree. You're not going to get the Diaz offensive production out of him. He's going to have a hit here and there. He'll bat eighth. He'll have, like I said, a good hit here and there. He'll be that veteran presence. He is a great blocker, which you need on Colorado Rockies pitchers, particularly Kyle Freeland sometimes if he's having a bad day. So it's a good thing to have, because backup catchers are not better on the offensive pedigree. You want them as defensive catchers. He is a great pick in my opinion. So again, they fill two big needs, and I think they'll definitely serve them well in 2024. And if all goes to plan, I think Stallings could definitely serve them well in 2025 with that option. Because like I said before, the three positions that you do need to, I would like to have somewhat elite defenders. Catcher is my number one position in that list.
Mm-hmm. And I'll say this before we kind of end up here is, a lot of people were like, "Oh, why not Gary Sanchez?" And I feel like Gary Sanchez, and I think Tom talked about it a couple weeks ago. Gary Sanchez is going to want to be a starting catcher for some team, and the Rockies, they could have given him a shot, and it would have been kind of neat, because I know last year the Rockies were interested in him at one point, and he went, I believe, to the Mets first, and then he went to the Giants. Or no, it was the Giants and then the Mets, and then went to the Padres. But I'm okay with the Jacob. Like, again, I like it. It's a safe move. Again, it's not like, the Rockies could, like you said, could bring him back on an option, but it's really for like a 1 year, or just kind of like a rental, like another word that a lot of Rockies fans like to use, a rental. And Stallings is very much a rental catcher. Excuse me. But I think it's again, safe move, good move, cheap, and you're really getting him for his defense and for his framing and his play calling behind the plate. And where Diaz, he can carry the load of the offense behind the plate with the bat, and we know how good Diaz was this past year, especially in the first half. Second half, not so good. And so it's something to keep an eye on for sure. So yeah, so I guess those are my final thoughts. So yeah, like both solid moves. I like the Stallings move, and I like the Dakota Hudson move there. So overall, I mean, like as we end, do you think the Rockies are done? Do you think they could get potentially one more guy, and that would probably, I think on the pitching side, I think they're done. However, we could see again like a left-handed pitcher, maybe bring back Brent Suter, like we alluded to earlier, or do you think they're going to get a left-handed hitter, for the bench, which is, I feel like, more likely? But I don't know. What do you guys think as we end?
It's tough, right? I definitely think that the Suter move should be a priority or something like that, right? To go bring in another lefty that has MLB experience, so you're not relying on some of our younger lefties. In terms of the bench bat too, that's also probably going to be important. So if I had to pick which is more likely to happen, I'd probably pick the bench bat. That's the left-handed bat that we do need. I don't know who's available in that regard, but I do think that's probably an emphasis that the Rockies should pursue before spring training.
Yeah, Gallo's available. Profar,
like beware on that one.
And Jock Peterson, he's not coming to Colorado, but he's probably going to go back to
hard pass.
Yeah, no, he's not coming here. He's probably going to go back to San Francisco, or even I remember there was rumors about him posting a picture with the Fanatic about him going to Philadelphia. Fun fact, he actually went to Philadelphia on my MLB The Show franchise, so that's why I was like maybe Philadelphia. So, and then who else was on the list? So yeah, Gallo. Yeah, like there's not really a whole. Eddie Rosario is another one that I kind of would be intrigued to get. He would be somewhat of a decent backup, like as a bench, and he has had good success against the National League West. Whenever he's played with the Braves, he had very good numbers against the West. So maybe he could be kind of like your wild card off the bench there. I mean, it'd definitely be an upgrade over Profar or Castro, 100%. Like Eddie Rosario, come on, baby, come on.
Yeah, just no Castro. That's my only request. No Harold Castro, please. Yeah. Where's Alexi Amarista when you need him, though? Honestly.
Yeah, the little ninja. Yeah, man. He was like, I remember, Bud Black. I think that's Bud Black's favorite player because history in San Diego. Bud Black loved Amarista. I remember that, but unfortunately, I think he's retired. But hey, let's call him out of or can Tom Brady come out of retirement?
Here we go again.
Yeah, I mean he's a catcher, but hey, I mean catchers. A lot of catchers can play infield, so that's something to look into that right there. So hey, Tom. Come on, baby. Hey, Russell Wilson. And here's another thing. Russell Wilson, he's also available. I mean, at the end of the season, I mean, the Broncos are going to cut him. And so maybe, hey, Russell Wilson, come back home, play for the Rockies.
Oh, boy.
Oh, man.
No, I agree. Whether it's pitching or position players, I would definitely want a lefty. Just looking at a quick search on Spotrac with the available left-handed hitting position players, other than the ones we mentioned, you've got guys like Austin Meadows is still available. Colton Wong is out there, but again, we have kind of a log jam in his position, so that's a no. Why don't we coax Joey Votto out of retirement? I'm kidding.
He could go to the Blue Jays, but I don't know. Blue Jays.
I think he officially retired though.
Oh, he retired. Oh, that's right. Yeah, man.
He put on Instagram videos just talking about and everything. But he officially retired. So heck of a career though.
Yeah, so. Hall of Famer for sure, 100%.
Jesse Winker is still out there. David Peralta is still out there. I'm just looking at outfielders because infielders we kind of got a lot. There's quite a few. I mean, Cole Calhoun is out there. I'm just looking at some big names and such. Adam Frazier, but we again log jam his positions. And yeah, Joey Gallo is still out there. His projected market value is $14 million. But again, signing beware, Scott Boras client. Brantley just retired. We could try and take a shot at Cody Bellinger, but that's probably gonna be a no.
Scott Boras.
Yeah, again, Scott Boras too. And
the Boras man.
He controls a lot of the market right now. Yeah. He's got Snell and Montgomery, the two top pitchers. And wait, no, he doesn't represent Chapman or Hader. No.
I don't think neither of them.
I don't think he does. So. But so there's some examples again. So just around a lefty bench bat, in my opinion, with the most ideal, because I know Schmidt I think he's discreetly said, not directly, the position players are basically set at this point, or the everyday position players are basically set at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be too upset about it, Jesse Winker.
No, not at all.
I think he had somewhat of a solid start in Milwaukee. Then he kind of cooled off.
He was an all-star.
That is a guy who actually was an all-star. There we go.
2021, Coors Field. That, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then Brian Reynolds too was an all-star.
He was with the Reds. I think he was with the Reds.
Yeah, he was Reds.
Yeah, he was.
Nick Castellanos, and then here's a funny thing too. The Rockies were also after Castellanos before they got Bryant. So.
Yeah, Chris would have been nice to have.
Chris knows what I'm talking about when we talk about Nick Castellanos in the group chat.
It's one of the stupidest things that makes me laugh every single time I see it.
Man. I cry every time, man. It's always fun.
There's a deep drive to left. Man, it's so great.
Yeah. But yeah, it's going to be interesting as we, close out the offseason because we're very close to spring training. I mean, again, it's only like 5-6 weeks away. So we're going to have to keep our eyes on that. I mean, make sure for those who are listening, watching, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, X, Twitter, you name it. Also be sure to follow Chris, man. And by the way, Chris, thank you so much for coming up with us today and just kind of talking Rockies baseball because something that we've been looking forward to for a while. So thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, sure. No, I'm here for it. Anytime you want me, I'm here to talk Rockies baseball. Baseball is great, and I'm a native, so it doesn't get much better than Rockies baseball in theory.
There you go. There you go. All right. If that is it, I think that will conclude everything. So thanks, Chris, for coming on. And we're looking forward to having you back on here soon. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Truly. It was an awesome time. It was a blast.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That will conclude this episode of the Rockies Now podcast. Feel free to follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. And be sure to subscribe, follow, rate, and review all of our social media pages. We love hearing from all of our listeners. Thank you for listening to today's edition of the podcast. Have a great day, everyone. And as always, go Rockies.